Sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me, and may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea. When I put out to sea. When I put out to sea, and may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea.
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes! The Watchet Market House Museum are pleased to present a glimpse of this ancient port.
The fossil record of Watchet's rocky foreshore shows that huge dinosaurs roamed the area over 200 million years ago, and woolly mammoths around 190,000 BC. The museum displays many segments of these remarkable animals, including an almost complete small ichthyosaurus. Nearby, at Helwell Bay, fossils are still deeply embedded in the rocky strata. Here they have remained undisturbed for millions of years. Thanks to the museum's former curator, Mr. Leslie Wedlake, the museum also holds a unique collection of lithics and flintstone implements, providing evidence of the area's habitation by early man from the Stone Age. Watchet has also been the home to the Romans, with a small Roman settlement discovered over the hill at Doniford. Their departure in the 5th century was in due course followed by the arrival of the Saxons, who claimed ground by occupying a hill fort on the cliff top overlooking the sea, initially built during the Iron Age. Under the rule of Alfred in the 9th century, and then his sons, 10 burghs were established throughout Wessex, Watchet being one of them, which enabled the settlement to become fortified. A royal mint was established in the town, and Ethelred II was the first Saxon king to issue coinage from Watchet. It continued producing silver pennies through to the 11th century. However, the Vikings still raided the town on several occasions. Today, proof of their savage pillaging can still be found, with many Watchet silver pennies turning up across Scandinavia. This semicircular ridge in the ground is known to us as Dawes Castle, much of which has fallen into the sea. Christianity came to Watchet in the 12th century, and led to the establishment of St. Decuman's Church. Proudly overlooking the town, it is one of the largest and finest in West Somerset, and was aptly named after Decuman, a Welsh missionary who lived sometime between AD 400 and AD 700. Legend has it that he crossed the Bristol Channel with a cow on a wattle raft, and went on to live a fairly lonely life here in Watchet. The legend also claims that, whilst praying, a native came from behind and cut off his head. Undeterred, he raised himself up, took his head in his hands, and carried it to the well below the church. There he rinsed off all signs of blood and placed it back where it belonged, before continuing his daily prayers. This spot is now known as the Holy Well. The reality is that it was more likely that he was scalped, but maybe that is not such a good story. Watchet has been a seaport for over 1,000 years, starting with a small sheltered inlet at the river entrance and developing into the protected harbour we see today. During this time, the sea has ravaged it many times. After one such severe storm in 1458, the devastation was so vast that the homeless townsfolk received much needed financial help from the Bishop of Bath and Wells. Early trade involved the import of salt and coal and the export of hides, gypsum and seaweed. The seaweed was used in Bristol to manufacture glass. In the 16th century, packs of locally woven woolen cloth were shipped away. Some fabric, known as Watchet blue, was used to make simple uniforms for sailors. In 1692, King Charles II suspected smuggling in the town and sent his Surveyor General of Customs to investigate. It was reported back that the town's officials looked the other way and even encouraged locals to engage in illegal activities. As a result, Watchet went from being a town of beggars to one of great wealth. It wasn't just trade that drew people to this small harbour town. With its colourful sailors and alluring surroundings, the area also attracted poets of the time, with Coleridge visiting Watchet in 1798. It was here he was inspired to write his famous Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. The ship was cheered, the harbour cleared, merrily did we drop below the kirk, below the hill, below the lighthouse top. In 1811, another famous artist visited the port, and it was here that J.W. Turner produced his sketch of A Tranquil Harbour. Watchet was also the home of Captain Thomas Chitchey, 1855 to 1926, a self-taught marine artist and one of a number of marine artists of the 19th century known as pierhead painters. A prolific artist, his naive but technically accurate paintings are much sought after. Watchet Museum has one of the largest collections of his work in the country, featuring Watchet ships and harbour scenes from the boom times of the 19th century. By the 14th century, Watchet had developed from a small Saxon settlement into a working town. Besides fishing and farming, local people were engaged in the manufacture of cloth, and the cliffs at Watchet were a valuable source of alabaster and gypsum. Local kilns produced lime for the land and for building work. In 1405, lime from Watchet was used in the dungeon at Dunster Castle, and in 1760 it was used in the foundations of the Eddystone Lighthouse. Seaweed was also harvested from the seashore, burnt there, and the ash sent up to Bristol to be used in the glass-making industry. Coal was an important asset for the area. By the end of the 18th century, 6 coal merchants were in the town. In 1855, the newly constructed West Somerset Mineral Railway brought iron ore from the nearby Brendan Hill mines to Watchet. From here, it was shipped across the Bristol Channel to be smelted in the ironworks at Ebbw Vale. Watchet quickly became a boom town, and in 1861, the little harbour was enlarged to handle the demand, as thousands of tons of iron ore needed to leave the port. In 1862, the lighthouse was installed, and many new ships were built. As a result, new industries developed, including the arrival of the Great Western Railway. A rowing and sailing lifeboat was stationed here from 1875 until 1944, and a Coast Guard station has been present since the 19th century.
1, 2, 3, 4!
John Short, fondly nicknamed Yankee Jack after his ship ran the blockade in the American Civil War, was Watchet's most renowned sailor and shantyman aboard ship. He was often heard leading his men in song as they heaved and hauled on the halyards. In 1914, some years after his return home to Watchet, John was discovered by Cecil Sharp, an eminent collector of English folk songs and shanties. In December 1900, a terrible gale almost destroyed the harbour. Despite the heroic efforts made by the sailors to save their vessels, most were torn from their moorings and driven into a corner of the harbour, where they ripped and ground each other to pieces. Most of the town's industries at that time depended on the harbour, and as no private capital was forthcoming to rebuild it, Watchet was a town that had lost its livelihood. The problem was solved in 1902 by the formation of a local urban district council. This enabled the town to rebuild the harbour and gradually regain its income. The last truckloads of iron ore were loaded into the ketch Lizzie in 1908, when the iron mines finally closed. This was the end of an important Watchet era. In 1990, Watchet's old enemy was to strike again. Giant waves battered the sea walls, causing significant damage and flooding to the cottages near the harbour. Once again, Watchet had to repair and strengthen its sea defences, and massive works were undertaken to keep this small harbour town safe from the ravages of the sea. The cliffs are, as ever, prone to erosion, such that the West Coast Road has close to vehicular traffic, presenting another headache for local traders. Market Street was the heart of Old Watchet, and the present Market House, now the museum, dates from about 1820. Here, merchandise was once sold to customers standing in the street through the large openings that now form the windows. The local river runs near here, an important power source for the mills once situated between Watchet and Roadwater. The same river helped support another important industry, paper manufacturing. From 1750 to 2015, papermaking was a vital source of income for our town. At its peak, the mill employed over 600 locals and was the backbone of the town's economy. It was a sad day for the area when the owners decided to close the mill in 2015, costing the community 170 jobs. Today, Watchet relies mainly on tourism as a source of income. We pride ourselves on supporting local artists, and the redeveloped East Quay presents art exhibitions and other cultural events. The harbour is now a marina, still developing, with hopes of providing a sailing link with South Wales harbours, but there is much to do in keeping the mud at bay. The West Somerset Heritage Railway brings crowds of holidaymakers to the area. With museums, weekly markets, a colourful carnival, and a busy music scene in the pubs and clubs that continues throughout the year, Watchet has a lot to offer people of all ages and interests, and continues to reinvent itself as it has always done.